Hey dudettes and dolls, my name is Ayla and I really don't want to make this video because it means I have to relive the trauma I already went through once. The Lion King remake. No, stop! You're gonna make me cry and not in the way this song usually does. I've been waiting quite a while to make this video because 1, I didn't want to relive the trauma, and 2, I didn't want to risk spoil anything for some of you guys. But then I realized, how do you spoil something where you already see 95% of it? The other remakes at least did something new. The Aladdin movie created new songs and characters that were actually kind of enjoyable. The Jungle Book had Mowgli stay in the jungle, probably because they just want to make a sequel, but whatever. And The Beauty and the Beast tried to explain some of the original's plot holes, while creating more plot holes, but that doesn't matter, they still all did something new. Now the Lion King remake had 1 new song. I don't remember a single lyric from it, but it was there. And Timon and Pumbaa had some more scenes and lines. None that were funnier or more profound than in the original, but they were there too. What I'm trying to say is that this movie is basically the original movie, but with very uninterested CGI realistic animals. Seriously, put the meh emoji over the original movie and then you just got the whole remake down to a point. That's where this movie ultimately falls down flat on its face. It's gorgeous, but nevertheless flat face. Look, if you like this remake, whatever, more power to you, but I will say to you what I said to my mom. There's a special place in movie hell for people like you. But ultimately, I'm just here to share my own personal opinion on some of the examples from the movie that I think was what made it not work and make me hate it. Even though The Lion King wasn't even one of my favorite Disney movies as a child, not even as an adult, I don't think it's even in my top 10, but I appreciated it more after this remake, and here are the reasons why. The first scene I want to talk about is where Mufasa confronts Scar. There's focus on Scar being unhappy with Simba having been born, and therefore automatically taking Scar's potential spot on the crown away from him. But in the remake, it's done with far less humor and charm. When it comes to the original Scar, some people did complain that he kind of became a little uninteresting once he had gained power and he had basically won the fight. So I guess what Disney did with the remake was that they thought, well, why not just make him boring and uninteresting to begin with? That way people can't complain that he got boring halfway through. Well, no, because there's nothing to him. He is so boring and uninteresting. Every charm and flourish and every little bit of fabulousness the original character had, stripped away completely. Pretty quickly, it feels like they're beating a dead horse. Or in this case... Too soon? It'll always be too soon. The I just can't wait to be king scene. Now, I'll admit right off the bat, I didn't expect the animal tower like in the original movie, but I was expecting some sort of grand finale to kinda top it. What we got was animals running through this little pond, and that's it. Mary Poppins would be proud. Actually, the remake one might be. The elephant graveyard scene. In the original, Nala is just as excited to go to the graveyard as Simba is, which makes sense. They're kids, they're adventurous, and they don't really understand danger the same way adults do. But in the remake, they decided to have Nala be afraid of the graveyard almost from the moment they get there, which I don't understand how anyone could think would be better than the original. Because if they were trying to make her look more responsible in comparison to Simba, they should have made her not want to go to the graveyard in the first place. Instead, now they just made a contrast between the two that feels unnecessary, and I'm not really sure what it's even supposed to give us. The next point I want to bring up is the hyenas. In the new version, Shenzi has become the queen of the hyenas, instead of being equals to Banzai and Ed, which is not necessarily something I dislike, but it's something that kind of gives off the vibe that they were trying to get feminism points, right? Oh look, she's the queen. I know with the good guys it's the king, but still there's a queen. We're just so progressive. Except with lions in the real world, it's the females who run things, so it's a little bit late to try to get some feminism points, Disney. After Mufasa saves Simba and Nala from the hyenas, he has a heart-to-heart with Simba, same as in the original. A lot of it is the same as the original, but here is the first time where the lack of emotion really bothered me. Like, look at the original. There's so much emotion in the way they look at each other, the way they talk, everything. And even though Mufasa has the same voice actor, I swear to God, even he sounds a little bit more disinterested than he did in the original. Mufasa doesn't sound angry, remorseful, or scared. And the whole thing just feels very rushed in comparison to the original. Which is impressive given how quickly they patched things up in the original too. Now we're to the scene that got me really angry. That was the first time through the whole watching of the movie that I actually got pissed. I was clenching my fist so hard that my mom actually noticed it. The be prepared scene. Remember it in the original? It was so grand and epic and overwhelming, like with the colors and the iffy references and the singing and the big ending, and yeah, that was cut down significantly and made more into a spoken word than a song. And the lyrics were changed, and no, they were not better than the original. Not even close. Most of all, I don't understand why it was cut down so much. This whole movie is already longer than the original, so what were they trying to make room for? That incredibly important Nala runs away from the pride scene? Ugh. In general, you just can't enjoy Scar's character at all because he doesn't enjoy being bad the same way he does in the original. Remember the stampede scene? Or rather, the moment where Scar leads Simba down to where the stampede is going to take place? In the original, he makes a death pun. He tells Simba that his father's surprise for him is to die for. Cut away in the remake, because I guess it was too horrific? I don't know. But either way, it was replaced with a line so generic that I can't even remember it. I'm not kidding. I tried to. Got nothing. Now, the mid-stampede is where the lack of emotions in the character gets really distracting. Not only does Mufasa not seem like he gives a shit when he's told that Simba is down there about to get killed, but the worst one is when Scar kills Mufasa. He doesn't lean in and whisper sinisterly, "Long live the king." We don't get a close-up of Mufasa's eyes widening as he realizes his own brother is about to kill him. And Scar doesn't as much let Mufasa fall as he bitch slaps him, causing Mufasa to fall. Let me repeat that. He bitch slaps Mufasa while yelling, "Long live the king." There really should have been a sound effect there, much like Jacksepticeye's intro. Top of the morning to you laddies. I can't do an Irish accent. And now we reach the point where Timon and Pumbaa comes in, two characters that I have always really enjoyed. Now, in the original, you could criticize them for being kinda misinformed and maybe ignorant, but they mean well and they're enjoyable and they're funny. But in the remake, they come off as kinda toxic. They make this argument that it can't be the circle of life because then everything they do affects someone else and then they can't do whatever they want. At worst, they sounded ignorant as they were supposed to, so the audience with Simba can learn the movie's ultimate lesson. But by making them sound so conceited and selfish, it just takes out a lot of the charm of them. Maybe I'm coming off as a little bit too critical of Timon and Pumbaa, but it just felt very toxic to listen to. Now we reach a point where Nala finds Simba again. And let me list off the many things they did wrong from when she meets him to Simba finding Rafiki. The recognition is way too fast. There is no build-up and no disbelief, and it literally takes about 10 seconds. Nala immediately tries to convince Simba to come home, but he dismisses her saying she needs to see his new home. She agrees to this, even though she literally just told him how much people are starving back at home. The transition into Can You Feel the Love Tonight is close to non-existent. They go from friendship to romance so fast that it's almost like the developers wanted to be at a top 5 rush romances. And coming from Disney, that says a lot. The fight between Simba and Nala afterwards feels more like a disagreement on whether they should have zebra or antelope for dinner. And the worst one. Can You Feel the Love Tonight is shot in the daytime. Or rather, animated in the daytime, which just makes it even more unbelievable. Like, how do you make a mistake like that? The song is called Can You Feel the Love Tonight, not Can You Feel the Love like close to sunset. It's not even that. It's afternoon at best. I know this isn't technically an important detail to the story or anything, but it's really easy to make fun of. And this is where Rafiki, one of the greatest disappointments to me, comes in. He sounds more like a stoner and much less wise, and anything important he did in the first movie is gone. For example, do you remember how groundbreaking and kind of amazing his little lesson was? The ultimate lesson in the movie, actually. Like how the past can hurt, but you can either learn from it or run from it. Gone. It wasn't important anyway, was it really? It was just the most important lesson in the movie. Do you remember how Mufasa literally appeared in the clouds in the original one? Arguably insane. I mean, Rafiki even jokes about it, but just so emotional and beautiful looking. I think that in the remake, they spent so much money on trying to make this character look realistic instead of, emotional, that they forgot to put a sum of money on the side to animate Mufasa in the sky. I am not kidding. The camera focuses on the sky as if we're supposed to see something, but it's literally just clouds. Look, I know it's supposed to look realistic in comparison to the original, but you want to know what isn't realistic? Your dead father talking to you in the clouds. I had been looking so much forward to seeing how that will look because I figured, you know what, that's gonna look amazing. And instead we get nothing. I think maybe there was lightning at some point at where his eyes were supposed to be, but you can't actually see Mufasa in there. You just hear his voice. That's not enough, movie. Not if you're gonna focus on the sky at the same time. As I mentioned earlier, there is a new song in this movie. It's entirely pointless, it's unmemorable, and why was it made? No, seriously, I would like to know why it was made. What, Beyonce, you just really wanted to have that extra song in there? And now we reach the big confrontation between Simba and Scar, and arguably one of the stupidest fuck-ups in movie history. Now, in the original, Simba kind of forces Scar to admit that he was the one who killed Mufasa. In the remake, Scar confesses it by mistake. He had told the lionesses that he didn't get there in time to save Mufasa or Simba, but when he's confronted by Simba, he accidentally says out loud that he saw the same fear in Mufasa's eyes that he's now seeing in Simba's, making the lionesses question, how did you see fear in his eyes if you didn't get there in time? That is the stupidest fuck up, especially considering that that wasn't part of the original movie. Why did they change this? Don't get me wrong, the reason why Scar confesses in the original movie is a little silly, to say the least. Like, what exactly is... no. Oh, and just since I'm already complaining at this level, Simba, in this version, consistently calls himself a nobody. Clearly an attempt at making the audience see that he has little confidence in himself and so forth. But instead of making him seem more sympathetic than the original, he just comes off as a whiny bitch instead of the sympathetic hero we are supposed to sympathize with. We're now at the part of the movie where there is the big battle, and we see Timon and Pumbaa fighting the hyenas. Now, in the original, Pumbaa gets pissed because the hyenas calls him Pig and not Mr. Pig. Another of this movie's many references of movies that children just hadn't watched. But in the remake, he gets pissed because they call him Chubby, which I guess is their way of making a comment on body shaming. He even says he will always stand up to bullies and not be shamed for who he is. Problem is, that coming from the character who has an entire segment in a song dedicated to how much he stinks, kinda makes it fall flat on its face. It's still very gorgeous face, but nevertheless flat face. So now the battle is over and Scar is about to die in the same way he did in the original. Except a little bit more horrifying. Now, this is not something I mind, but watching this, I couldn't help but think this was something that would scar some children for life. Don't get me wrong, the hyenas are still the ones that kills him by eating him, but because it's made to look like realistic animals, that alone makes it a little bit too real. Ed literally licks his face just before Shensi said, "You were right about one thing, a hyena's belly is never empty." Thank you for that! Now that we are at the end, I want to talk about the things I actually did enjoy in the movie. During the Circle of Life scene, my mom leaned over to me and asked me if they had used real animals. And when I told her no, she said, "Well, so far I'm impressed," and I have to agree with her. It does look really, really, really realistic. And even though that is what I would argue is the movie's biggest down point, it is worth complimenting as well. Here's a fun drinking game. Take a shot every time I say realistic in this video. Actually, no, don't. Or else these guys are gonna show up. Okay, enough! Another thing I want to compliment the movie about was the way they handled Timon and Pumbaa distracting the hyenas before the battle. In the original, it's the big hula scene, and I personally have always enjoyed it immensely, but I was prepared that it was going to be cut in the remake because of the more realistic approach. I was not prepared for Timon starting to sing "Be Our Guest" though. And I'll admit, at first I was kind of miffed because it felt a little lazy, but then I remembered that Disney has always made references to their other movies, so frankly, I have to give them a little applause for that. It did make me laugh. But it doesn't change the fact that the absolute majority of this movie's problems can be summarized with one thing. The CGI is too realistic. It doesn't make room for the character to have big expressions because they have to look like actual animals, but they also talk just like humans, so we can't connect with them just as animals either. King Kong from 2005 is a great example of how to do a CGI animal. King Kong never speaks, he doesn't behave like a human, he behaves like a giant ape, so we get to connect with him both as an animal, but also because we actually see his feelings shining through in his facial expressions and in the way he moves and behaves. We can't connect to talking animals because they aren't innocent enough to speak to our parental instincts like real animals do, but they aren't human enough for us to identify with them either. This is where I knew this movie was going to fail for me. You can't make realistic talking animals and expect the audience to have an emotional connection with them. There is nothing about the remake that's better than the original. No, nothing. Now, excuse me, I'm going to go watch the real Lion King. Wait, that's the whole plan, isn't it? They're making all these remakes to make us appreciate the originals more. So, not only do they get money from us watching the remakes, they get money from us watching the originals again and again. Diabolical. I'll still watch it. Hey, dudettes. Hey! Hey, dudettes. Hey, dudettes. Hey, dudettes. Hey, dudettes. Hey, dudettes. Stop!